Hey, fantasy people. Welcome to Razzball Radio on the Fantasy Sports Network. It's Halloween, so get your popcorn or your candy corn ready. All right, it's maybe not how Terrell would set it, but you know what I'm talking about. All right, listen, we have a couple of really special guests today. We got some cool stuff to talk about. We're going to talk to Michael Rathburn about a fantasy sports documentary that's coming out. But first, you guys know I did the tour. I did 32 cities, 32 days, 32 fantasy football drafts. On tour, I found this guy on Twitter, and I'm like, you need to come on the show. So it is my pleasure right now to introduce Mr. Joseph Bengtson. What's up, Joe? How are you?
Hey, Nick. How you doing today?
Okay, so I thought what I did was nuts. But you have actually toured not only all 30 Major League ballparks, you have also done all the Japanese ballparks, and you did on your last tour 13 of the 16 Mexican ballparks. I mean, man.
That's right.
That's crazy. By the way, you need to check this guy out at Facebook/Major League RT for road trip. Follow him on Twitter, Major League RT. What inspired you to do this, Joseph?
It's kind of a bucket list sort of thing. I talked to a lot of folks.
No. Saying I want to go to the Super Bowl or,
Right.
That's a bucket list thing. This is like going to Home Depot and buying the bucket section.
Okay, well, I'll break it down for you. When you start out, you don't start out thinking, I'm going to go to all the baseball stadiums in Mexico and Japan. You say, you know what? What would it be like if I went to all the stadiums in the U.S., right?
Yeah.
And at some point, you're saying to yourself, I could do that. So, I found myself a couple years ago sitting in a lonely little cubicle in a dark February, wondering what I was going to be doing with my life. And I decided that I had a little extra money and a little time off, and I was going to go do the 30 parks. Unfortunately, it snowballed from there, and it went from being, I'm going to do the 30 parks to, I want to write a book about this, and I can't write a book if I don't go to the holy trinity of baseball, which is the U.S., Japan, and Latin America. So ultimately, every summer I find myself doing a trip.
All right, so real quick, I totally get the bleak February in the cubicle. Maybe that's because you're from Alaska originally, so maybe that's what gets guys like you and I on the road. Like, let's get the heck out of here. But I noticed you're actually wearing a Quintana Roo baseball jersey, which is a Mexican state where Cozumel is. And if I'm not mistaken, I hope I got that right. But here's the thing: you only did 13 of the 16 Mexican ballparks. When I was on the football tour. There was only once or twice that was a little bit sketchy, and I needed to get out of there. I'm looking at you, Houston. Is that why you didn't do all 16?
No, actually, it was more out of everything. Poor planning on my part. I was running out of season. I headed down there to Mexico in August and tried to work my way through all 16 teams in a single month. The season ends August 15th, and I was like cruising around about August 12th thinking, man, I'm never going to make it to these last 4 stadiums. So what I ended up doing was picking off the last couple games by airplane. Usually I drive, and I really prefer doing it that way. Yeah. But when it came to going down to Cancun and going to see the Tigres, I just had to fly in. So that's why I only ended up getting 13 out of 16.
All right, that's a wicked jersey, by the way. And if you want to see all these stats, you can see it on his website, MajorLeagueRT.com. You did, when you did the U.S., just over 18,000 miles. On my football tour, I did 14,000. You did 37 states. I did 35. So it was I get what you did. Do you do it in consecutive days? I mean, are you trying,
Yeah. So
you're as crazy as me.
I know I feel your pain, Nick. So the thing is that, for me, it's all about doing it all at once and trying to knock it all out in a short period of time. The trick with that is ending up in the city where the team is at the same time that the team is actually playing a game, so you can go see them at the stadium. And that can be tricky. I mean, you can get stuck in a town for a week or two waiting for them to show back up if they're on a long road trip. And, you're kind of limited by geography and how fast you can drive. So in that respect, you try and get it all done at once.
Road warrior, man. You know what? You got to do the spring training stadiums. Actually, we're working on something for a spring training tour. So you never know. Maybe we'll combine it. Do it as Razzball Radio / Major League Road Trip. Hey, so you were saying, we talked a little bit off the air. Next on the list is maybe Cuba.
I'm hoping for Cuba. I'm working on some plans in the background and trying to figure that out. For me as an American, it's tough to go to Cuba. So, I've got to figure out how to get that done. I've got a friend who might be able to help me with that, and I'm working on it. But, like I said, I'm not done with this yet. I've got at least a couple more countries that I want to work on before I wrap this up and finish my book.
Oh, so you're doing a book on all the tours combined?
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh, man. I'm a wimp because I was going to try and do a book just on my 32-day tour.
Yeah, you should do it. You should do it.
I can't write so good. You know, right?
I have the same problem.
Although I'm Canadian, so I've actually been to Cuba a couple times. I've never been able to time it though with the baseball season because they play kind of spring summer.
Yeah.
But I did see back in the day. I actually had an old Havana Industriales T-shirt. Which
Nice.
was Fidel's team. So, all right. So let's say you knock off Cuba next. Where else could you possibly go? I mean, I'm thinking maybe South Korea, maybe Aruba.
Yeah.
The Dutch Antilles.
That's absolutely correct. Korea is definitely on the radar. After doing Japan, I can't ignore North Korea. Taiwan is another good one. I think they've got 4 to 6 teams down there. That's where Manny Ramirez was playing a couple of years ago. And the spirit down there, from what I understand, is really off the hook. I'd really like to see what a Korean game is like. I'd like to see what a Taiwanese game is like. Because for me, it's about going to see what the culture's like at all the different stadiums. Because it's so different when you compare something like a game at Baltimore versus a game at the Nagoya Dome in Japan.
Yeah, totally. Also, too, in the Dutch, in the Netherlands, too, I think they have a pro league there. They call it honkball.
Yeah.
I love that.
Australia's another good one.
Yes.
Yeah, the Australians, they seem to be making it into the Asian series on a pretty regular basis at this point. So, got to go down there and see what they're doing. I know that there are other ballpark chasers who've done Australia before, but I'm the first one to...
Ballpark chasers. So what does that make me, a fantasy draft chaser? I don't even know. So, listen, let me ask you one real quick question before we go.
Yeah.
What happened to the old Alaska Summer League? Because you're from Alaska originally. What happened to that quick?
The Gold Panners, they're still up there kicking around. As far as who they play, I couldn't even tell you.
No, but way back in the day, that's where they used to do, they had like a whole minor league up there in Alaska.
Yeah, well, as if I recall correctly, I think it was Derek Jeter who actually played for the Gold Panners there in my hometown of Fairbanks.
There we go.
Other than that, yeah, I don't know, man. I think they're an independent team. It's really sad. A lot of the small teams now are having a hard time finding leagues to play in if they're not affiliated with a major league team.
Exactly. All right, Joseph Bengtson. Again, check it out. Facebook/Major League RT. Lots of pictures there. Really cool stuff. Really appreciate you joining us. I want to keep in touch with you, Joseph, because I got a feeling you and I are going to hook up someday. All right?
That sounds fantastic, Nick.
All right, we'll be right back with Michael Rathburn. This is Razzball Radio, Fantasy Sports Network. Welcome back, Razzball Radio, Fantasy Sports Network, and I am delighted to be joined by fantasy industry expert and good friend to the show, Michael Rathburn at Fantasy Rath on Twitter. Hi, Michael. How are you?
Hey, doing well, Nick. Glad to be back on, as always, and exciting time of year with everything going on, NBA, World Series, NFL, college. So it's and I can't leave out NHL. I know you're an NHL guy.
You know what? It's funny. I'm not a huge NHL guy, but definitely, it is a great time of year. I think it actually rivals kind of March, April when you get, the tournament, the NCAA tournament. You get the hockey and basketball playoffs kicking off. So great time of year. Oh, plus spring training.
Definitely.
Hey, speaking of which, you know what I'm going to be doing this weekend? I'm actually going up to Scottsdale. I'm going to cover some of the Arizona First Pitch, which is put on by USA Today and Baseball HQ.com. And this is like the who's who of fantasy baseball guys that are at this event. You've been to it before, haven't you?
Yeah, it's an awesome event. I went there a few years ago. Was able to see Bryce Harper, Mike Trout, and a bunch of several other guys. It was about 150 guys, I think, that were at the event, all in the industry for the most part. And it's kind of funny when you look back on it. It's been 3 or 4 years, I believe, since I went, or maybe even 4 or 5. But it's kind of funny. There was guys that were not in the industry at the time that went that are now making a living in the industry. So I'm really glad that they've had the opportunity to make a living and do it. And it's kind of good to look back on that kind of thing.
That's really cool. Yeah. So we'll tape some segments while we're there. Like the who's who of fantasy is there. So we'll have some great tape out of that for the Fantasy Sports Network. All right, but what I want to talk to you today about, Michael, I mean, we've had you on before. I know you're top notch when it comes to fantasy, but I want to talk specifically because today's kind of a special show. we're going a little bit off kind of the day-to-day grind because it is, we are kind of mid-season. And you've been working on this amazing documentary called Living the Fantasy. You can check out the trailer at livingthefantasy.com. And basically what you're doing here, I want to make sure I get this right, you're covering 7 different individuals or subjects throughout the fantasy football season, correct?
Yeah, we're covering 7 people. I can't say guys because we got 2 women in there,
Okay,
so which is
fair.
awesome. So we got seven people that we're following throughout this football season. We're chronicling their journey at high stakes fantasy football, whether it's season long or daily. We're partnering with FFWC, Scout.com, FF Toolbox on that season long side, and then we're partnering with DraftKings on the daily side. And we've been extremely fortunate that one of our players did win the Millionaire Maker on
Come
DraftKings.
on. Are you serious?
Yeah, yes, he did. He won with the Millionaire Maker.
Oh my gosh.
Corey Albertson is one of the guys. His partner is Ray Coburn. And Corey happened to be in Chile at the time, and we were able to get a film crew out there and get that footage of him winning the $1 million. So we're pretty pumped about that. And we've got some other people who are probably going to win some good money over the next few months through the rest of the season. So it's exciting and to chronicle the journey and to tell the story. Some of the people are average Joes. Some of the people are celebrities. Some are working in the industry. So we've got quite a few different subjects, and it's just exciting. And then also not only that, but we have tons of footage and interviews of people in the industry giving their opinions and thoughts about fantasy sports, fantasy football, where the industry's headed, why people love it so much, and what makes it such a great participation.
And one of the things I really liked was as I was watching the trailer, because look, I did 32 drafts in 32 cities this year, and what I was always trying to do was get really cool shots, because I mean that's part of the the story is the adventure of it and where you are, whether it's the Roberto Clemente Bridge in Pittsburgh or whatever. And you guys got really good shots. I'm kind of curious. I mean, how did you put this all together? I mean, where did this start from, and where are you guys at currently?
Sure. Well, I definitely got to give kudos to Josh Adler and Deep Singh, who are the director and the producer on the project. As far as it was really Josh's baby that he came up with the concept. He reached out to some people in the industry. Him and Andeep went to film school together at Columbia. So you go to Columbia Film School.
Oh, that's not a very good film school.
Yeah. So you know that you've got some tremendous people behind the project, and then I got involved as Josh was kind of seeking some advice in the industry, just kind of some direction a little bit, and we worked on a list of people that we thought would be great subjects to follow. Talked to a lot of different people, came up with the 7 that we had, and we got 7 amazing people that we're following, and we've been really fortunate and blessed in that area that we really hit grand slams on all of them. So and we're currently filming throughout the season, and they check in with each player every Tuesday. They do Skype interviews and things like that.
All right. By the way, we had T-Hole, who's a regular here with Razzball, on yesterday. He was really upset, or he was on Wednesday, sorry. He was really upset because he's the most beautiful man in fantasy that he wasn't somehow involved in this documentary. So I'm just putting it out there. If you get an angry email from T-Hole Bedek, you know why. So how did you guys kind of distill this list down? I mean, because we follow the industry, so we know some of the players, like guys that actually play in it and make money at it. But sure. I mean, how do you kind of distill that down?
Mm-hmm. Well, you come up with some people that you think are going to be willing participants. With me being in the industry for as long as I've been in, I pretty much know everybody that is involved. So we kind of came up with a list, and then we worked with FF Toolbox, Scout.com. We worked with Scott Atkins on getting some of the season-long players that he felt were some of the top-notch players, but also we're going to be willing participants and have a great story to tell, great personality. So that's how we came up with people on that side. And then, getting guys like Jeff Mans, who's an incredible personality.
All right, don't get into him yet. I want to ask you about Jeff after, actually.
Tommy G was like the first guy. Tommy G I've known in the daily fantasy space for about a year and a half now, and he's an extreme personality, but it's him. Like, that is Tommy G. He is the Jersey Shore guy. He's in the stock market. He's a financial guy. He's a day trader. He makes a very good living, but he also loves fantasy sports, and he plays at a very high level, and he's been very successful. So, Tommy's story was just one that we absolutely gravitated to and wanted to get that out there. Thad Houston is a guy that lives close to me here in Charlotte, and I've known Thad for a few years. And
I tell you what, Michael, we're going to go to break, but I want to talk to you about Thad because I had the pleasure of meeting him when we were in Charlotte. So we'll do that after the break. It's Razzball Radio Fantasy Sports Network. We got more on livingthefantasy.com. Welcome back, Razzball Radio Fantasy Sports Network. Nick Capozzi, joined by Michael Rathburn, who's part of the team that's putting together this great documentary called Living the Fantasy. We've been talking about it. And right before the break, you mentioned Thad Houston. Now, Thad's a really cool guy. Had the pleasure of meeting him in Charlotte. Why don't you really quickly tell us about his story?
Well, he's actually a radiologist, and he has 5 kids, and he's got a very patient wife. And Thad's been a guy who has been playing fantasy sports. He's been a sports fan, and he jumped in to play daily fantasy sports, and he wasn't that successful in the beginning. And him and I actually had email exchanges and conversations, and I was just mostly like, hey, obviously you like playing, but you're not exactly having success. You might want to take a look at, what you're doing and switch it up a little bit, maybe scale back a little bit. He took the advice, and he kind of went away for a little bit, came back, and really his story was he just started looking at the winning successful players in daily fantasy sports and how they were building lineups and kind of what some of the trends and what some of the strategies were. And then he came back and he applied it, and he's an extremely intelligent guy. I mean, he went to John Hopkins. So, he was really able to jump in and get back in. And then he won some big tournaments on DraftKings. He won a really big tournament on Draft Street in NBA. He won $100,000. And that was kind of the springboard for him in daily fantasy sports, for him to say, okay, now I get it, and I'm having a lot of success. And so, he's been a tremendous story from somebody who's a self-made guy in fantasy sports, built his way up from, taking his hits, and then, so that's been incredible. We've got, on the season-long side, we've got Kimra, who's an attorney, and probably the most well-known season-long female fantasy football player out there in the industry. She's been extremely successful. She's been a top 5, top 10 player in the season-long space for many years, and she's good. She's really, really good. She's very sharp. She really knows her stuff. So, getting that perspective, getting a woman's perspective on how, being in a man's world, so to speak,
right, and
really being very good, and so that's been cool. We got Pilar Lastra, who is So we got
Google
her.
Pilar.
We got Pilar, who's also legitimately, a really, really good player. And
just
Jeff
maybe
Mans,
tell everyone who Pilar is, just in case.
Jeff Mans from Fantasy Alarm, Sirius XM.
Yeah, actually, how did you now? Because that's the other thing too. There's a ton of guys in the media. How did you come up with, going with Jeff on this? Because he's great. Like, just watching the video that you have of him, it's very real, and I really like how.
I felt really strong about Jeff. It's funny, when you start this project back in April and May, and you start coming up with certain guys, and you start talking to people, and they don't know. I've known Jeff for several years, and I'm like talking to Jeff, and I'm like, listen, man, I'm part of this project. I'd like to talk to you about it. I think maybe we could end up using you. I was always like very optimistic because I know we had such a short list. I did not know who we were going to use. So I would just, talk to Jeff, in email and chat, whatever. And then it got to the point where we really had to make decisions. And so our group met with Jeff, loved him, and it was on, and I love Jeff. He's a great spokesperson for the industry. He's got a great personality. He's extremely knowledgeable. So for us to get Jeff was huge. I mean, that was a huge coup for us.
All right, so, back in the day, after I got out of broadcasting school and decided there was no money in it, and there still isn't, I got into film and television. I actually worked for 4 years as an assistant. I had a couple other jobs in Toronto in the film business. So once you guys have all this shot at the end of the year, kind of what's your ETA for actually getting this complete? What do you think it's going to be ready? And then what's your plan to launch this? Mm-hmm. I mean, are we going to Cannes? Are you and I get on a flight to Cannes? Because I speak French. Yeah. If you need a translator, I'm just putting that out there.
Yeah. Well, I know, from this perspective, because I'm only involved on a certain level when it comes to the film distribution and things like that. You definitely want to try to get, we can get Josh and Indeep back on to kind of give more of the guts of the project, right, and what the plans are from that perspective. I know we're looking at mid 2015 as far as when this whole thing would be wrapped up, and we want to hopefully be able to really promote it heavily, obviously now, but once it's complete during the summer leading up to NFL of 2015. We do have a Kickstarter campaign that started this week.
I was going to mention that.
Go to Kickstarter.com, type in Living the Fantasy. You'll be able to find it there. We have a target goal of about 135K or so, give or take. And there's certain levels where, depending on how much you're able to donate, you get certain, perks. And actually, one of those perks, if you want to be one of the lucky ones to cough up 10 grand, I volunteered to basically, if somebody wants advice in the fantasy industry, how to get started in daily fantasy or how to get started in season long or whatever it is they want to talk about. I've offered up, my time to be able to help somebody out if that appeals to anybody.
Love it. And look, Kickstarter's fun too. I mean, that's part of what we did to get the tour going with Razzball Radio this year was we used Kickstarter. So it's definitely check it out. I mean, you can get somebody's price. You can just put in $1 if you want. I mean, all joking aside, it was a lot of guys from Razzball who put in $1, to help get us to actually get the show on the road. I mean. It was tough because we were supposed to have 3 guys for the whole tour, and I wound up having to do about 60% of it by myself. So we ran into some hangups. But all right, so a couple quick questions because we got a minute left here, Mike. We're looking next football season, correct?
Yeah, that would be when everything is completely done. Hopefully, the film will be done the summer of 2015 with just a massive push towards the football season next year.
Okay, awesome. And look, I'm really excited about it. Check out, again, go see the trailer. You can see it at livingthefantasy.com. It's really cool. It gets you in the mood for it. And
I've watched that trailer, I don't even want to know, countless times, and I get goosebumps every time I watch it.
Yeah, it
so
really
it's great. It's great stuff.
Does. Especially too when you get great guys in it like Thad and Jeff. All right, Mike, listen, really appreciate you joining us today. We're really excited for this to come out. Follow him on Twitter at FantasyRath, RATH. This guy is in the know. All right, if you want to get into fantasy, talk to this guy. What's your per hour rate? No, just kidding. All right.
No, right now, man, we just you do it for the love of the industry, and joking. If anybody has questions, just hit me up.
One of the most helpful guys. See, I go to this guy for advice. I'm not kidding. All right, we got to wrap this up, Michael. I'm really excited for this to come out. I'm Nick Capozzi. He's Michael Rathburn. This is Razzball Radio on the Fantasy Sports Network. We'll be back Monday recapping all the action from the weekend.